Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and glad to be here with you.
Good to be here with you.
And we have a guest who we're going to jump right in. We're going to do our news a little bit later because we've got Vince Redman on Skype right now.
He's coming to us from Colorado, right?
Yes. I was just telling him that's where I went to graduate school. I love Colorado, and I especially love the Denver metro area, which is where he's at. And Vince, for those of you who don't know, is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's somebody who did ABA therapy for many, many years at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, then became an LMFT. He's sort of the perfect combination, right? Because he gets it. He gets it on all fronts. So Vince, we welcome you back.
Hello, how are you guys?
We're good.
Good to have you with us today.
Good. I actually can see me for the first time now.
Okay, great.
You're looking very handsome and spiffy, as always.
It's different for me, doing it from my laptop and having the view coming up my face.
It's an okay look.
Well, thanks for being with us today. We thought we were going to take on the subject of siblings because there's a lot going on with the sibling equation.
And it's something that Nancy and I were underprivileged in this area, that we only have our only children. And so we thought you could give some good advice for families that have siblings, and one of the sibs is going through ABA therapy, but the other ones aren't, because it can be a rough time.
I think the biggest thing, the first thing that always comes to mind is making sure that they're involved in the treatment, either it be through explanation. Now again, it could be a younger sibling or an older sibling, and we have to obviously look at what's age appropriate for them at the time, but making sure that they understand what's going on now to their level, so that there's tutors that come, or there's therapists that come to work with them to to help him speak, or to help him write, or to help him be a great big brother, or a great little sister, or what have you. But keeping them involved, answering their questions, being open to any curiosity that they might have, not only to their sibling, but to the process as well, because there's a lot of change that happens when ABA programs start for their sibling. There's all these new people, and they have to go to centers, and they have all these. A lot of times the siblings are being brought to these and being kind of carted along. And so we have to make sure that we give them explanations. We do talk to them about things, and to be proactive about it, not reactive, not always wait for a question. Give them that education. Talk to them about it first. Make sure that that they know that this is a positive thing, that where we're going is good. Because a lot of times there'll be this question and kind of, is this, is something wrong? Why are we keep having to go to these things? What's wrong? What's wrong? But if it's like, no, we're going there to learn, and we're bringing, our brother here to talk better. We're bringing him here to learn how to play toys like you do, and that kind of thing. It creates a very positive environment and a really good opportunity for relationship building between us.
What about siblings that start to take on a feeling of responsibility for their sibling with autism? Is there a way that their parents can talk to them about that?
Well, there's a couple different things, right? I mean, when you have a sibling that's taking on responsibility, my first thing is I think that's a good thing, because then there's that bond, there's a closeness, there's a connectivity to their sibling, and they want to, protect them, or they want to, help them. And I think in any sibling relationship, especially from older to younger, that's a good thing to have. Now, the problem sometimes, and I think this is what you were alluding to, Nancy, as well, is there's an over responsibility where they're taking on the responsibility that like they have to teach them certain things, or that they have to protect them from everything, or that they are the ones that are responsible for the child's development and growth. So we have to make sure we talk to them about what are their responsibilities, what are the things that are good. Again, protecting them and wanting to do good. Have them give the information to an appropriate adult, or have them make sure that they, do continue to interact with the sibling in those environments. There's a lot of responsibility that's displaced throughout the family, and siblings some responsibility. We want to make sure that they maintain the appropriate amount.
Okay, we lost you
Okay,
for
yeah,
just a little second
for
there,
a little bit,
but I got the sense
yeah, I
of
think
it.
you're back.
So one of the things that I've noticed, Vince, is that uh, the kiddos that grow up having been siblings of individuals on the spectrum tend to be some of the best well-rounded people I've ever met in my life. They're more patient, they're generous with their time and their spirit. They're really super kind and aware people. But when in talking to them, and I try to interview siblings whenever I can, they do say that they felt like they were less than, that everything was about the other child. And I've asked them from time to time, well, now these are adults, right? So what would you have done differently? And they don't really have an answer. I'm looking forward to some of them having kiddos themselves and being able to put it through a filter once they're a parent, because I think that helps. But what would you say to a parent worried that at hearing that and thinking, okay, I don't want my kid to feel less than?
In the first step is just what you were saying, is just awareness, right? Awareness that the other siblings are aware that there is a lot of time and a lot of parental efforts being put into the other child, right? There's appointments and there's sessions and there's therapy and there's schooling and meetings and a lot of stuff that does take away. So going back to what I was saying earlier about communicating that, being proactive, don't just assume that the child is okay with this. Even though they might not show any behavioral displacement or any behavioral problems, you still want to ensure them that educate them on why we're going to these meetings, why the sibling has to go here, why does the family have to go there. That education and that communication at a fairly early age, I think, is extremely important, because then they're always in the know of what's going on. Plus, they're encouraged to ask questions. So we've opened up a really good communication pathway. The other thing is then also dedicating time for that sibling as well, right? Making sure that they do get individual attention, that their individual achievements and desires and extracurricular activities are being addressed as well. Us parents can only go so many different ways, and we know that. But if we're communicating it and then actually still dedicating individual time for the siblings, I think we're doing everything the best that we can.
Thank you. What do you think about with our kiddos on the spectrum? We're always looking for what are they specifically good at, and then trying to feed that. And I'm just thinking about, my sister had twin girls, and it was always so hard that what happened was our family sort of differentiated. Well, one of them was really into one thing and the other was really into something, and then we sort of doubled down on those differences and really tried to reinforce, oh, well, one of them really and put that in that context. Is it important for us to find something that the non-ASD SIB is good at and really reinforce that?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're going to do as a family, a lot of things the kids are going to do together, but you do want to find the individual strengths, the individual preferences or things that they enjoy doing, and really highlight that. That is for Timmy, and this is what Timmy's good at, and we're going to go to Timmy's baseball games, and these are the things that he either excels at, or it could be something that he just shows great interest in, and we want to make sure that we reinforce that and we highlight that as something that is individual to him, and that's something that he gets a lot of attention, because that's where a lot of this is stemming from, is making sure that we're giving the positive attention that's going to make them, it's going to help them grow, but it's also going to encourage them to do things that they want to do independently.
And kind of keep that sacred, right? The show Atypical on Netflix, which centers on a family where the son is on the spectrum, the sister, and such a great relationship on that show between the siblings. I think that's one of the best things about that show, is how it's written for the sibling. And there's a scene where she's the big track star, right? And everybody's there to watch her run, but something happens with the son, and suddenly mom and dad are underneath the bleachers talking with the son, and everybody misses the big moment when she wins the track meet, and she says, well, that's just typical. Isn't that just par for the course? So not only finding the thing that they're really good at, but keeping that sacred. Hard, but making sure that you promote that and don't soft pedal that for something else, right?
Right, and like you're saying, it's not perfect, right? I mean, like the scene in the show that you were referring to, again, those things happen, and I'm sure it happens to her, and it happens to all of our families more often than we want it to. But that doesn't mean we stop. It doesn't mean that, because sometimes I think the first reaction is we're not going to go because we don't want him to throw a fit, or we're not going to go because we don't want to interrupt. I think that is we want to still encourage families to continue to go to the track meets, continue to go, because the child is going to see that dedication, that persistence, and that they do genuinely want to be there. And sometimes they have to go into the bleachers, sometimes they have to take a walk, but you know what? There also is going to be times they're going to see her win the race.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you, Vince. Those are all good points. And any families out there with siblings that are listening, we know it's tough to balance it out.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah, so as Shannon and I said, we don't have that situation with only children, but kudos to all the families that are trying to keep a balance in the family.
And I love what you said, Vince, about including the kids, because I think that's super important. The truth is that a sibling can end up being one of the best therapists on your team, and if they're reinforced properly for it, they will enjoy it as well.
Right.
Well, Vince, we hope you enjoy Denver, and say hi to everybody there for us in that area. You're actually in Inglewood, correct?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yep. Well, today I was in Fort Collins Monday, Aurora yesterday, Inglewood today.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you
taking
so
time
much.
from your schedule.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Anytime. Have a great rest of your week, ladies.
Thank you. You too.
All right. So we'll take a quick break.
And then we'll come back and do
with
the
some news stories.
Yes. Yeah. Stick with us. We're very excited because we're in the Noah's Ark exhibit, and we're here with Jason Porter. Thank you for taking us on this tour.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So you're going to show me around a little bit and show me some of the secrets of the Noah's Ark exhibit, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool, let's go. Yeah. So Jason, tell us, this is an amazing space. Why is it so incredible for children?
One of the values of the Skirball Cultural Center is taking care of the earth and one another, and so this idea of repurposing materials that would otherwise be tossed off was a big component to how we designed the galleries. It's based on, certainly the story that everyone knows is the one from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Noah. But in our research, we looked at over 200 flood stories from around the world, and many different cultures have flood stories that have similarities, and the similarities that we identified were these 3 chapters: the storm, some crazy challenge that comes to your life; an ark, a kind of means of survival, a way for a community to come together to survive; and finally the rainbow, which is this kind of symbol of hope, the second chance to make the world anew.
Love it. All right, let's take a look through, and we're going to talk about some of the learning opportunities that are available here.
Sure. We really wanted people to kind of discover what they were supposed to do. For example, this elephant has a gong in the center, and there's a little wheel here that you can turn and see what happens. But there's also some hidden things, like there's a little peephole in this polar bear, so it's kind of a moment where you could talk with your kids about what does it mean that polar bear in there only has a small piece of ice to live on it, and you could talk about kind of the environmental issues that might be associated with it.
All right, should we go downstairs?
Yeah, let's check out the storm.
So Jason, what do you call this room?
This is called the Storm Gallery. In one side of the gallery, we have a storm wall, which is all sorts of sounds and sight effects to make the storm come to life. We have this, what we call the load up. It's fairly intuitive. You put animals onto the conveyor belt and you turn the wheel and they get loaded up onto the ark. Except you can't do both at the same time by yourself. It's kind of layered in the doing, the learning that we're really interested in, which is about this notion of working together in order to accomplish something. So, when you first get on the ark, obviously you enter 2 by 2, as the story goes. And so the animals in this first section of the ark, they're not quite sure where they should be. They're a little bit nervous about who to hang out with. The gallery is really organized so that the the animals are still in pairs. So we talk a lot about what are the elements of home that you need to survive. And it's really a nice kind of intro into the whole experience of being in a community, learning to be together with people who may or may not be the same as us. This gallery of Noah's Ark is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it was designed, that it offers a huge variety of experiences in a way that really accommodates people of all stripes and spots. So there are more quiet zones, like we just left in the move-in day, where you can come into this room where you have a lot of large motor things that are happening, including climbing, and we kind of have nicknamed this the arcade. It's kind of the chapter in the story where they're making new families and they're mixing with other animals that they've befriended. Oh, we have to talk about poop.
We can't do a show without talking about poop.
So, the other fact of life on an ark is that everybody poops. So the challenge is to, clean up.
Okay, so we're in the last room, very cool room. What do we call this room?
We call this the Rainbow Gallery. People really get that this is a place of hope. Sometimes there's an art-making project, that it ends in some sort of inspiration, that people feel like they're inspired to take action in the world and make it a better place.
Thank you so much for showing us everything and telling us about all the wonderful things at the Skirball Center. If you come to LA, you really need to
And
put
I
that
haven't
on
seen
your
it.
list.
Yeah, I've gotta
oh
go
my
see it.
gosh, it's one of my favorite things. And you go there and they only let a certain number of people in every hour, which is a really lovely thing. So it's never so crowded that you can't play with the things. And I love to go sometimes. I mean, I've gone with a wide variety of people. I've gone with kids on the spectrum, kids not on the spectrum. I've gone with little kids. I've gone and seen senior citizens that are there without kids. It's a really incredible exhibit, you guys. So much fun. They do a really good job there. So definitely check that out. But we've got some in the news, and I always try to do a nice mix with good stories, bad stories, and always end on a good story. I have failed you completely today. It's all bad. There's nothing but bad.
Yeah,
so
these are some very
gird your
disturbing
loins.
stories.
Yes, it's very upsetting.
The first story is girls with autism at a high risk of sexual abuse, from a very large study, 4,500 people. And this is women with traits of autism or ADD as well, report having been sexually abused as a child, many women.
It's upsetting to me that it's from Spectrum News, they say it's unclear why girls in these conditions are at heightened risk for sexual abuse. But if you just take it apart in the math, girls in general are more likely to be abused. It doesn't mean that boys aren't abused, but girls are abused more often than boys. They are. And anybody who has any kind of a physical or mental disability is more likely to be abused.
Right.
So you put those two things together and it makes sense that our girls on the spectrum would be at a higher risk.
And they're more likely to engage in risky behaviors such as substance abuse, which could make them more vulnerable to abuse.
Well, there is that as well. And we know that sometimes with some girls that are on the spectrum, their filter for sexuality is they don't have a danger filter. So the attention feels good, and the touching may feel good, but it puts them in a position where that they're incredibly vulnerable. I will say, years ago, I went to a seminar that was labeled as how to prevent your child from being sexually abused. And we all got there, and then the person who was doing the talk said, I'm really sorry because there's no way to be absolutely sure that that won't happen to your child. So what this lecture is going to be about is how to ensure that your child survives it, that they are not destroyed by it, and that they are a good court reporter that can turn the person in. I found it to be really, really informative. And some of the things that she talked about were that we used to say to kids, people can't touch you where your bathing suit is, right? And she said we have to stop that. We have to say that that is their body top to bottom, and that people should not be allowed to touch them without their permission.
Okay.
That was very edifying for me. And she also has almost like a meditation for if something bad is happening to a child, how to remember everything while it's happening. It helps them to disassociate. Is that a horrible thing to have to talk about with a child?
Is.
But made a huge difference for some kids. If you're interested, you can write to me and I can help you to connect you to that sort of lecture.
And on the subject of abuse, we have
Yeah.
2 stories of abuse. A student with autism was injured by a school resource officer.
This was in Denton, Texas.
Yes.
Which is a suburb of Dallas.
Right.
And 10-year-old. And they called in the resource specialist, and that person felt that they needed to handcuff a 10-year-old boy. Words fail me with stories like this because I just don't understand, but I do. It's people who haven't been properly trained.
Right.
If you feel like you don't have any power over a 10-year-old and that all you can do is handcuff them, then that's what you're going to go to. But if you understand that there are ways that in which you can behave and react and protect yourself and protect other people, it would never occur to you to put a 10-year-old in handcuffs.
And in this particular case, they actually had a behavioral intervention plan, a BIP, in place that spelled out what to do if the son did misbehave. The agreed upon tactics were a walk or a cool down room to help the boy regain control. We never agreed for him to be mechanically restrained, said his father.
And, I'm sure that this will result in lawyers and checks being written because there was a BIP written. I think most of us have the BIP written and we don't want to get a check from the school because our child was hurt. We'd rather that the BIP be followed. But the fact of the matter is that you write the BIP and the people who are in the room know the BIP and you're lucky if the teacher is in the room, right? And then they go, okay, well, the BIP is written, woohoo! But the lady in the lunch line doesn't get to look at the BIP, and she certainly doesn't get any training on it. The bus driver doesn't get to look at the BIP or get trained on it. The resource person apparently did not, but that's a huge oversight.
Yes, it is.
And as a parent, we need to start requesting, first of all, you got to get the BIP in place, right? These parents are covered because they have the BIP. But you get the BIP in place, and then you make sure that everybody gets a copy of it, and you ask them, has everybody been trained on this, and get them to sign off on that they have, because otherwise they're going to end up paying a lawsuit. We don't want our kids to be hurt.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Another case of abuse, a very disturbing video out of Vacaville, California. Parents in California say their 8-year-old autistic child was attacked by a school bus driver, and there is video that shows the child terrified, crying, and begging the bus driver to stop.
And I watched the video, and I don't recommend it to anybody because it's really disturbing. But, here's the thing, is that, and you don't get to see everything that happened before, right? But clearly, the bus driver is upset with this child, and the bus driver is taking it personally and starts to have a dialogue with the child and is condescending.
Yes.
And I don't appreciate that.
Right.
But that's one thing, right? And then the aide comes up to the bus to pick up the child. And at that point, what should have happened was the aide should have gotten on the bus and dealt with the child. But the bus driver turned and said, no, go away, let me handle this. And I understand why the bus driver did that, because she has to be on the bus with that child and the aide isn't typically there. But when you turn away the person who is trained in the BIP, when they're there and you turn them away and say that I'm going to deal with it, world of hurt. And so this bus driver has been fired.
Right, which is a good thing.
Yes, but I don't know. I don't know that this wasn't a good bus driver, but she was having a really bad day. And I mean a really bad day, because then she drags the child out of the seat and
rips off her jacket.
Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable. But I'd like to think that this isn't a horrible person, but that she wasn't given the tools to know how to deal with this. We all have to be requesting and saying, what I'd love to request is they all have to be trained no matter what. But that you can't do that in an IEP.
Right.
But once you have that BIP, you can request that everybody that interacts with your child is trained in the BIP. And if they say that they don't want to, get that in writing. Can you please sign this document saying that I asked you? And there's that section of the IEP where you can write in whatever you want. You can write it and say, I requested that everybody that deals with my child be trained in the BIP and was told that they wouldn't. You know, because if that's there and something happens, and I don't think they'll allow that. I think they'll go, all right, we'll train them in the BIP. How effectively they do it, I don't know.
So, not good stories, but all cautionary tales.
Very cautionary tales. Be careful and cross your T's and dot your I's. We can only take responsibility for we can only take responsibility for.
Right.
I love the mom who every year takes the IEP and the BIP and she puts it in a protective sleeve and she puts magnets on the back of it and she gives it to everybody on the team and says, oh, here's one for the OT and here's one for the SLP and
It's a
here's
great idea.
and they can stick it to their file cabinet. And she gave one to the ladies in the lunch line.
Great
I thought
idea.
that's brilliant.
All right,
Absolutely.
so we have actually now to turn to some good news and some positive things. We have a wonderful guest, Haley Moss, and she has so many accomplishments, this young woman.
Yes.
It's just unbelievable, her resume. And she's going to be talking about some of her books, including Middle School, The Stuff Nobody Tells You About, which is one of her several books that she has contributed to and written.
Yes.
So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Haley Moss.
There we go. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman from Taka here to do some more cooking. Are you ready? Allergy-friendly fun, and I've got a guest.
I'm Jamie Davis. Yes, I'm her sister.
Today we're all about cooking something really fun and healthy. That's a dessert. We're going to actually use carrots, real carrots, and we're going to talk about how to make the best tasting carrot cake you could ever hope for. So it's really easy. You don't want to buy the carrots that are the baby carrots. Why?
Well, those aren't really carrots. What they do is they take carrots, they mush them all up, they take whatever the carrot looks like, they throw it in a bin, they bleach them, and they process them, and then they have a little machine that makes them into little formed baby carrots. So they're really not born that way.
So this is what a carrot really looks like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. So I just want to show everybody how to make really simply. We just washed off the carrots. They were really dirty from the farmer's market. And we're going to throw them in to our food processor. So what's good about the food processor is that we can go for a really fine grade. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 cups of carrots. Then the next thing I'm going to pull in is our gluten-free, casein-free flours. I'm using a protein-based flour. Bob's Red Mill is great. I also have my flaxseed meal and pure cane sugar that's organic. I cut it down already, so you don't need to cut it again.
And one of the reasons why we like to use organic sugar is because, once again, most sugars on the market are bleached to make them look perfect.
Yeah, we don't like perfect.
No.
We like ours.
That's why we like each other.
All right, so we've added our baking soda, baking powder, xanthan gum, nutmeg, and salt. Now, again, why we use the gums is that's the ingredient that actually holds the flour together. Regular flour automatically has that gluten. This is the replacement to the gluten. These are the secret ingredients for the cake itself. 3/4 cup of the crushed pineapple is in there. That gives it a beautiful texture and flavor. And now what I'm using is the oil. What are your favorite oils, Jamie?
I like using coconut oil any chance I
Yes.
get. In fact, coconut oil would be excellent in the carrot cake.
Now what I did was I reserved a little bit of the oil and we placed it in the bottom of that pan so it doesn't stick.
Yep.
But we love the baking stones.
Yes.
Why do we love the baking stones?
Evenly cooks
Yes.
and easy cleanup.
If you like crispy, you got to get a baking stone. I also feel that they're less toxic. So now I'm going to cook this thing at 350 for about 35 minutes. You really want to get it golden. Let's get it in there. Awesome. So now that we got our cake all done, let's get on with the frosting. Coconut oil, probably the best thing in the world you can eat. It's so good for your brain. One of the best oils that we can use. So I'm going to use a 1/3 cup of the coconut oil. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of an organic vanilla, Madagascar, and make sure it's alcohol free. And then what we're going to do is add 16 ounces of organic powdered sugar And we're going to add our 4 to 6 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm using the whisk version here on the KitchenAid, which will give it a nice mix. All right, so if you get any on the sides, you just come on in with your little spatula. And this makes the best frosting for the cake. So we're almost done whipping it up. And voila, we are talking good stuff right here. We have the best situation for the best birthday cake, especially if you want to deal with something that perhaps has a little less sugar. You've got a great cake that no one will know the difference. I'm not a decorator. I don't like to decorate. I just want to eat it, and I don't care what it looks like. Ask my family. I'm a family with autism. I just want to eat the cake. Are you ready to do this? It can be your birthday. Yay! So to me,
my goodness,
this
so good.
is so good. It's meant to be gooey, as you can see. But what I love about this is a great birthday cake with extra frosting to make your kids happy. A little less sugar and a lot of love. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com, and on Facebook.com/autismlive. And then you can reach me and Jamie and get some more ideas from the Talk Recipe side. So let's have some more
You
cakes.
say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. We are welcoming Haley Moss via Skype. She's coming to us from Florida. She is the author of Middle School, the stuff that nobody tells you about. But she has been involved in, it's like where to begin. This is a woman
Right.
with so many different talents.
So many times.
She's currently studying for the bar because she's about to be an amazing lawyer, but
Right.
she's a very accomplished and popular artist and writer and an advocate, in particular for autism, but for special needs as well. So, Haley, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you for having me.
We're
Yeah, it's
thrilled
great to have you here. Tell us about law school. You've already graduated with your Juris Doctor from University of Miami. Tell us about law school and what's next for you.
I graduated a little over a week ago. It was quite honestly one of the best days of my life. And like we were saying, as far as what's next, I'm studying for the Florida bar exam, which I take in July. And even with law school, I think it was an amazing experience. I've learned a lot, and something that was really cool is I was actually my class elected commencement speaker, so I got to give the student address at graduation to everyone in my graduating class, as well as their friends, families, professors, and attorneys in the community. It was truly amazing. So what's next is I get to start practicing, assuming all goes well at the bar exam in September, and hopefully gonna make a difference by being an attorney.
And you want to be an advocate on a smaller level. Eventually, if it originally thought you might want to do something more broad, but tell us about your autism advocacy.
I thought that I was going to go to law school originally when we were talking about law school. I thought that I was going to be doing disability advocacy on a greater scale, like maybe going to DC or working for the Department of Justice, something along those lines. But I realized that most of advocacy work is best on the ground. So more like at home and dealing with the families that we encounter, like my family or your families, or even people on the spectrum or who have disabilities back home. So a lot of policy takes a while to create. There's a lot involved in it, a lot of different moving parts, but I realized that even when you have a family going through a divorce or something just isn't right in our community, there's so much we could do for those people in particular. So even in divorce proceeding, being able to make sure that a child on the spectrum or with a disability is getting services, or it's included in a settlement or a custody arrangement, is something you could do on a small scale that can really make a difference in one person's life and doesn't require the same amount that a policy change that might not happen depending on who's in office or something like that.
I'm curious as to where this desire to be an advocate springs from. How did this happen for you?
I fell into advocacy when I was 13. I was invited by the University of Miami's CARD Center, so the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. They're actually the ones who diagnosed me when I was 3 years old. and they invited me to go to the Autism Society of America conference. I was 13. It was in Orlando, close to Disney World, so, sounds like a great time at that age. And I went. I was on a panel, and I was the only girl. I was the youngest one, and people were listening to what I had to say. And I also realized that where I'm at would not be possible without a village of people, and that there are so many people that need more from our villages, and there's just so much. And I wanted to be able to give back because I realized I've been very lucky in my life with where I've gotten, what opportunities I've had, and who I've encountered in my life.
And you have encountered some people. We should.
Yeah, we have a picture of you with Bill Clinton.
With some of your artwork.
There we go.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that J-Lo there next to him?
That's J-Lo.
And who's the other gentleman? I don't recognize him.
The other gentleman, I believe, was a teacher from the New York City public schools. I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure. It's been a couple years.
But pretty impressive. You've been moving in some pretty high circles. And you are successful in all the different ways that you can be successful. And I'm sure when you just said that you were diagnosed at 3, that there were some people who went, wait, what? Right? But talk to them a little bit about how does autism affect the way you see the world?
So going back to what you were saying about being diagnosed at 3 is I didn't have the best diagnosis you could hope for. I was nonverbal. So a lot of what was expected is an occupational therapist once told my mom that you might get to see her take her driver's test, but you're probably not going to see her go to an elite private high school, because my mom had this high school in mind that she wanted me to go to here in South Florida called Pinecrest. And she's like, you'll see Haley take her driver's test, but you won't see Pinecrest. And I did graduate from Pinecrest 6 years ago now. So that did end up happening. It's really the ability to say you believe in our kids and you believe in us when the world says no. So I wanted to just throw that one out there real quick.
What type of interventions and treatment and care did you get when you were younger?
I guess what now is known as ABA, but growing up I've always heard it as floor time. So like my mom would play with me and all that stuff, and we did a lot of rewarding with Beanie Babies.
Right.
So I have a very extensive collection of Beanie Babies as a little kid.
Right.
Because my big fan of rewarding proper behavior and things that were expected with toys and stuff. So I always did very well in school, like in the classroom and all that. So it was mainly social stuff as I got older that got hard.
Right. How does autism affect the way you see the world and your work?
I think it just means I have a unique perspective on things. I don't see it as a bad thing. And I know a lot of people don't always see autism as the most positive thing in the world, but I realize that there's no other way that I would know what the world is like. I wouldn't know how to see the world from a neurotypical perspective. To me, the world is beautiful with sometimes it's overly loud sounds or how vivid something looks or just having a wild imagination is. I realize that autism really does change how I see things, and I appreciate that.
And you have a very... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like, some things are hard for me, but they're also the same kinds of things that might come easy to someone else, and things that are easy for me might be hard for someone else. So I just think it's a unique perspective more than anything else.
And you do have a unique perspective because we know that there are so many more boys on the spectrum than girls. And for our viewers that are watching that have girls, what are some issues that you are particularly concerned about relating to women in particular on the autism spectrum? It is the year of the girl and the woman, according to the UN. So what are some things you're concerned about?
With women, I think the most interesting thing is, even though the statistics tend to say that there are more boys than girls, I really think the biggest obstacle that women face is that they're underdiagnosed. So I do think that autism probably does occur equally amongst the sexes. I just don't think that women are diagnosed as often, because oftentimes we pass as something else. If you look at the criteria as a whole for autism, it does seem kind of geared towards the boys. Like, the girls aren't lining up the toy trucks as much, but they might be playing with dolls in a different way, or they might know a really, really vast amount of information about a topic, but it's a more socially acceptable topic, so it doesn't get flagged as quickly. So I realize a lot of girls that I've met on the spectrum as well, we tend to be more socially acceptable in terms of behavior, and we just get written off as quirky, kind of like the movie characters and TV characters that a lot of people find endearing. But the issues I see that face women uniquely are issues revolving around relationships, so like consent and all that kinds of stuff. And I also think that issues about, sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
No problem.
That's okay. Let's talk a little bit about your books, because in particular you like to talk about middle school and college and be helpful and useful. Is there a particular reason why that was so such a pressing need for you to talk about those subjects?
Absolutely. So with middle school, I went to 3 different schools in 3 years. So I've seen a lot at that time of my life, and I realized that there was so much that went right and wrong, and there's so much that can be learned from, especially because middle school is collectively everybody's awkward phase in life. So with like puberty and new interests and new people and realizing that you're coming into your own and you want to be a little bit more independent. So I think that it's that phase of life where people are still trying to find themselves and understand how they're not quite little kids anymore. And that's when peers start amping up social pressure. So things like social media and the like. I've actually been talking about updating the book because so much has changed since I was in middle school. I mean, we didn't have Snapchat and Instagram. So
Right.
things like that. Is there so much societal pressure that comes onto young adolescents?
Well, and this is a very interesting book, this middle school, the stuff nobody tells you about, because it's really like an advice book from one girl to another, to say, like an older sister, to say, here's what you need to know on every subject imaginable. A really great thing to give to a family. First of all, for mom and dad to read through and understand before somebody starts middle school, but then a great gift to give to a girl who's going off to middle school, really for anybody, girls or boys. But there is a lot of stuff in here that's specific for the girls. That it's amazing how specific you get. Like, I just opened up the book and there's this section on making friends, and it gives some suggestions for conversation starters with friends. Very fascinating information about instant messaging, texting, and cell phones. It's a good book to get for your girls on the spectrum, middle school years. But let's talk a little bit about the artwork, and Samantha, show us some pictures.
Where do you get the inspiration for your artwork, Haley?
Just overall around, I just think of things a lot. I'm very active imagination, always was that way. And I also love looking at things like fashion. I love looking at TV. I love just consuming media, if that makes sense. I love getting to just see stuff. So, and then I realized, as far as originality goes, I think that my styles are unique, but I realize that I am just a collection of things that influence me too.
Your drawings are very whimsical and very magical in many ways.
Thank you. But I'll see something and I'll want to incorporate it, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily my own idea, but it's something that it's like I really want to use that or interpret that. So I was in New York City a couple weeks ago, and I got to see all the modern masters at the MoMA, and so I got to see like Monet's Lilies and Starry Night, things like that in person, and it's like, wow, I want to incorporate some of these elements of how the paint is on these things, certain things like that it's impossible not to be inspired by. So it really is just a collection of everything. And I realize sometimes I've even gotten inspiration from like ads on TV or in magazines or on social media. It's crazy. But I feel like I can get ideas from literally anywhere.
I can't wait to see how you're inspired by Monet. That will be really exciting to see that kind of art with Monet, a nice mix. We're almost out of time, but we're wondering if you have any parting words, any advice for parents or for other people on the spectrum.
I think my biggest advice, if there's like one thing I could tell people, it's trust yourself and listen to yourself. So a lot of people on the spectrum have a lot of gifts and talents. I tell parents, encourage your kids and other people on the spectrum to go for it. And if you are someone on the spectrum, to explore it and to enjoy what gifts you have to bring to the world. We need your perspective. We need your unique talents. We need all of that stuff that makes you who you are.
Amen.
I think that's really important.
Okay.
And another advocacy is to listen to our voices on the spectrum. Is at the end of the day, I am the expert on me. The expert on me is not going to be my parents, although they know a lot about me, but they also can't read my mind. and professionals are not the expert on me either. So I realized at the end of the day, listening to us on the spectrum about our experiences is probably one of the best things that a parent can do, as well as understand, this is how I see the world. This is why that, like, the fluorescent lights might be too bright, or this is why it might seem super loud to me, or something like that. That makes being on the spectrum a little bit more of a challenge at times. So I think we're the best people to listen to as well.
Absolutely. And I know both of us as parents, one of my favorite things in the world is when there is an individual on the spectrum who is able to convey those inner thoughts, because as a parent, isn't that what you want most, is to know what's going on and why, and to be able to communicate, whether it's verbally or otherwise. We want to know more. We absolutely want to know more. So thank you for that advice. Haley, where can we get the book, and how can we find out more information about you?
You can get the book on Amazon through AAPC, the Autism Asperger Publishing Company. And if you want to follow what I'm up to, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Haley Moss Art, or you can check out my website at haleymossart.com.
Great.
Fabulous.
We wish you the best of luck with your bar that you're going to be taking, and continued success with your writing and your art, Haley. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So amazing. Isn't she inspirational?
Remarkable young woman.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness. Really a wonderful role model for anybody who has a daughter out there. Really fabulous young woman. We're going to take a very short break and come back to finish out the show. Stick with us.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism,
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
And we are back. That was really enjoyable. What an inspirational young woman Haley is.
Really inspirational.
Now
We
you
had a
have some
couple of questions that came in. Somebody wrote in and said, my son, aged 14, hums constantly. His voice is so sweet, and he hums his own melodious tunes. I have even had some people ask me, where does he learn music, or what is he singing? The truth is he hums his own melodious tunes. However, the issue is that he does this almost all of the time. He hums when he's not being attended to. Sometimes he hums even when he's in the middle of answering something or doing something like coloring, writing, talking, taking a bath. Now he has also made a habit of humming when eating food. When asked to stop, he stops for a few seconds and then resumes. However, when asked to sing, he does not sing his melodious tunes. Instead, I have to ask him to sing a song that he has listened to. He loves listening to songs, and he chants that song instead of singing. I really think singing could be one of his strengths. Could you please give any suggestions on how to build this strength and how to stop him from doing all the time, especially during eating? Thank you. And I was saying to you during the break, I don't recall Wyatt being a hummer, but you said that he is.
He does hum, and it's in his behavioral intervention plan to stop the humming. They put him on a timer, which is no silly sounds for him.
Right.
So that's how they deal with the humming. to extinguish that?
Jem hummed, but he did more what they call vocal stereotypy, which humming would go into that category too. He would make these little high-pitched noises that were like R2D2 noises, and they were all the time. And sometimes it would make me nuts. And we tried a bunch of different things, and that's really, with behaviors like that are usually they're automatically reinforced behaviors. There's something about it that feels good. And if you're somebody that has head things, like you're overstimulated or understimulated in your head, like in your sinuses or just on your hair, it feels good to hum. It does. Like if you have a cold, hum, and it helps to drain your sinuses.
Right.
There is something that feels good about that. The thing that stuck, and we tried a bunch of different things, but the thing that stuck was when they taught him to, and then would ask him to do the humming, still do the humming, but do it in his head, not vocally. And it took him a little while to learn how to do that. They helped him to visualize it. And then once he knew that he could get that whenever he wanted, and that it didn't bother anybody else, he was relieved. He was like, oh, I can still do it.
Right.
I just don't have to vibrate my throat. So I offered that up as a solution.
For the humming.
But we tried like 25 different things before that.
Okay.
And so each one works differently with a different kid, but keep trying.